Marcus Whitfield ripped the platinum wedding ring off his finger and hurled it across the courtroom. It struck Elena directly in the chest. She gasped. The ring bounced off her body and clattered to the floor, spinning in circles before going still. "There," Marcus said, laughing. "That's the last thing you'll ever get from me. Now pick it up like the maid you are." Elena pressed her hand against her chest where the ring had hit. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just looked at the clock. 9:58 a.m. In 2 minutes, Marcus Whitfield would learn what it meant to go to war with the wrong family. Drop your city in the comments. Let's see how far this story travels. Said. The ring lay at Elena's feet. She didn't pick it up. Marcus leaned back and laughed louder. "What's wrong? Too good to bend down now. You weren't too good to scrub my bathroom floors for 10 years. His attorney, Raymond Cross, chuckled beside him. The reporters in the gallery scribbled faster. "I said pick it up, Elena." Marcus crossed his arms. "Or are you waiting for your imaginary lawyers to do it for you?" More laughter. From Marcus, from Raymond, from the reporters who had been paid to witness the humiliation of a nobody from Louisiana. Elena's court-appointed lawyer grabbed her arm. Derek Simmons was 26 years old and terrified. "Mrs. Whitfield, please," he whispered. "Just take the settlement. $10,000. It's better than nothing." Elena didn't look at him. "No." "They have fabricated evidence. Photos, testimonies. Cross has never lost a case. He's going to—" "Derek." "Yes. Be quiet." Derek's mouth snapped shut. Something in her voice made his blood run cold. She didn't sound like a woman about to lose everything. She sounded like someone waiting for a bomb to go off. Marcus stood up, buttoning his jacket. "Your Honor, can we speed this up? I have a lunch reservation at the Four Seasons." Judge Patricia Coleman looked at him with barely concealed disgust. "Mr. Cross, your opening statement." Raymond Cross rose. He was 62 years old and had earned the nickname the Executioner by destroying over 300 opponents in divorce proceedings. He charged $900 an hour. Today, he expected to earn every penny. "Your Honor," Raymond began, "my client is a self-made man. He grew up with nothing in Baltimore. Single mother, 3 jobs, food stamps. He earned his way to Howard University, graduated with honors, and built Whitfield Financial Technologies from a laptop in his cousin's garage." Raymond pointed at Marcus like he was presenting a war hero. "Today, Whitfield Financial is worth $400 million. My client is the American dream." He turned slowly, his finger now aimed at Elena. "And this woman tried to destroy him." Elena sat motionless, her hand still pressed against her chest where the ring had struck. "Elena Morrow," Raymond continued, "a waitress from a town in Louisiana so small it doesn't appear on most maps. No education, no family, no skills. My client met her when she was serving drinks at a hotel bar. He fell for her simplicity, her innocence. He thought she was genuine." Raymond grabbed a thick folder from his table. He was wrong. She was calculating. She was lazy. And ultimately, she was unfaithful. A murmur rippled through the gallery. The reporters leaned forward. "We have evidence, Your Honor. Hotel receipts, staff testimonies, photographs." Raymond slammed the folder onto the table. "While my client worked 18-hour days building an empire, this woman was entertaining other men in his own bedroom." Marcus dropped his face into his hands, performing grief like a Broadway actor. "We are seeking full annulment," Raymond declared. "Zero alimony, immediate eviction from the marital residence, and damages for emotional distress totaling $5 million. He returned to his seat with a predator's smile. "The defense has nothing, Your Honor, because the defendant is nothing. She came from nothing. She contributed nothing, and she deserves nothing." Derek stood up. His legs were shaking so badly the table rattled. "Oh, objection, Your Honor. Mrs. Whitfield has been a devoted wife for—" "Devoted?" Raymond laughed. "She threw dinner parties with his money. That's not devotion. That's parasitism. That's not— She has no job, no income, no assets, no family, no one in this world who will vouch for her character. Raymond spread his arms wide. She is alone, Your Honor, completely and utterly alone. Derek sank back into his chair. He had nothing, no evidence, no witnesses, no ammunition. Marcus caught Elena's eye. He grinned and mouthed two words, "Goodbye, maid." Elena looked at him. For a long moment she didn't react. Then she smiled. It was a small smile, a cold smile, the kind of smile a cat gives a mouse before ending the game. Marcus frowned. Why was she smiling? She had nothing. She was nothing. He had made sure of it. Elena reached into her purse and pulled out a phone. It buzzed once. She looked at the screen, then at the clock. 10:00 a.m. She stood up. "Mrs. Whitfield," Judge Coleman said sharply, "sit down. Your counsel will—" "My counsel has done his best with the lies he was given." Elena's voice cut through the room like a blade. It wasn't the voice of a beaten housewife. It was the voice of command. "However, my actual legal team has just arrived. I request a 30-second recess to allow them to enter the building." Marcus burst out laughing. "Legal team? What legal team? Did you hire your hairdresser?" Raymond snorted. "Your Honor, this is a pathetic delay tactic. She can't afford—" Boom! The courtroom doors exploded open. Everyone spun around. 8 men in black tactical suits stood in the doorway. They moved like special forces operators, synchronized, precise, lethal. Earpieces coiled down their necks. Their eyes scanned the room, assessing threats. They stepped aside, forming a corridor. Through the corridor walked a man. He was in his late 60s, but he moved like a predator in his prime. Silver hair, ice blue eyes, a charcoal suit that cost more than most houses. He carried a cane with a silver lion's head, not because he needed it, but because it made him look like what he was, a king. Beside him walked a woman in her 40s. Tall, sharp-featured, wearing a white power suit. She carried a leather briefcase stamped with a gold crest. Behind them came an army. 15 lawyers in identical dark suits carrying towers of files. They moved in formation, silent and terrifying. Raymond Cross dropped his pen. "What is this?" Judge Coleman demanded. "You cannot barge into my courtroom." "My apologies, Your Honor." The silver-haired man stopped in the center of the aisle. His voice was deep and smooth and made the air feel heavier. "Traffic was unfortunate. I am Richard Beaumont." Silence. The kind of silence that follows a nuclear detonation. Marcus's face went gray. His hands gripped the table until his knuckles turned white. Richard Beaumont. The Richard Beaumont. Oil fields across Texas, shipping companies across the globe, media networks, banks, senators. The Beaumonts didn't just have money, they had power. The kind of power that made presidents return their phone calls. "And I," the woman in white said, "am Camille Beaumont Hayes, senior partner at Hayes Morrison and Sterling." Raymond made a strangled sound. Hayes Morrison and Sterling represented royal families and Fortune 10 companies. They did not appear in Manhattan family court. "We represent the defendant," Richard said. He turned to Elena, and his cold expression melted instantly. His eyes softened. His voice warmed. "Hello, sweetheart." Elena walked toward him. She moved past Derek's stunned face, past the frozen reporters, past Raymond Cross's open mouth. She embraced the old man. "Hi, Dad," Marcus screamed. "Dad!" He knocked his chair over. He stumbled backward. His voice cracked like a teenager's. "That's impossible. She's Elena Morrow. She told me her parents were dead. She said she grew up in foster care. She lied," Richard said simply. He released his daughter and faced Marcus. All warmth vanished from his face. What remained was glacial hatred. "Well, she omitted. She is Elena Beaumont. She used her mother's maiden name because she wanted to be loved for herself, not her fortune." He took a step toward Marcus. She thought she found that love in you. Another step. We gave her 10 years. 10 years to build a life with you. We stayed away. We watched from a distance. We let her play house in your tiny apartments and drive your cheap cars. Another step. Richard was close enough now to count Marcus's eyelashes. Then you threw a ring at her chest in front of strangers. You called her a maid. You tried to leave her homeless and penniless. Richard smiled. It was the smile of a man who had destroyed empires for breakfast. That was a mistake. Camille slammed her briefcase onto the defense table. The sound was like a gunshot. This is a motion to dismiss all fraudulent claims, she announced, pulling out a document. And this, she produced a much thicker file, is a countersuit. Raymond found his voice. Countersuit for what? Fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion, adultery, conspiracy to commit perjury. Camille handed a document directly to Judge Coleman. And $8 million hidden in offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Marcus felt the room tilting. You're lying. Elena has no money. She's nobody. She ironed my shirts. Because she loved you. Richard's voice was ice. Not because she had to. You treated a queen like a servant and were too arrogant to see the crown. Elena stepped forward. She looked at Marcus directly for the first time. Who funded your seed round Marcus? He blinked. What? Lionstone Holdings, $3 million. Your first real investment. You said they believed in your vision. Marcus opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Lionstone Holdings is a subsidiary of Beaumont Capital. Elena took another step. My trust fund. I authorized it 11 years ago, before you knew my name, before you knew I existed. She was close now, close enough to see the terror in his eyes. I own 49% of Whitfield Financial through shell corporations. My family owns another 7%, she smiled, that cold, terrible smile. That's 56%. Controlling interest. Marcus couldn't breathe. I'm not just your wife, Marcus. Elena leaned in close. Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow filled the entire room. I'm your boss. I've always been your boss. You just didn't know it. The courtroom erupted. Reporters shouting, phones clicking. Derek staring with his mouth hanging open. Raymond grabbing for his phone. Marcus lunged forward and grabbed Elena's arm. You can't do this. I built that company. I sacrificed everything. You can't just... Elena looked down at his hand on her arm. Then she looked at his face. You sacrificed nothing. You took. For 10 years you took everything I offered and convinced yourself you earned it. She pulled her arm free. But I'm done giving. It's time to take back what's mine. She turned to her father. We should go. We have a board meeting at noon. Board meeting? Marcus's voice cracked. I'm the CEO. Elena paused at the door. She looked back at him one last time. Check your email. She walked out. Her father offered his arm. The army of lawyers followed. The bodyguards closed ranks behind them. The doors shut with a heavy thud. Marcus stood alone in the silence. His phone buzzed. He looked down with trembling hands. One new email. From the Whitfield Financial Board of Directors. Subject Emergency Board Vote. CEO Removal. Body. By unanimous decision, effective immediately. Marcus Whitfield has been removed as CEO pending criminal investigation. All access credentials have been revoked. Security has been notified. Marcus dropped his phone. It cracked against the courtroom floor. He looked at the empty doorway. He looked at the wedding ring still lying under the defense table. He looked at Raymond Cross, who was already packing his briefcase. Where are you going? Marcus demanded. Home. Raymond didn't look at him. I don't represent losing cases, and you, Mr. Whitfield, have already lost. You can't leave me. I paid you. The Beaumonts will pay me more to walk away. They already offered. Raymond headed for the door. Good luck. You'll need it. The door closed behind him. Marcus stood alone in the empty courtroom. His empire was gone. His lawyers were gone. His dignity was gone. All that remained was the ring on the floor and the echo of Elena's voice in his head. "I'm your boss. I've always been your boss." Marcus Whitfield sank into a chair that no longer belonged to him and stared at the ceiling. For the first time in 20 years, he had no idea what to do next. Marcus ran. He didn't walk. He didn't stroll. He ran out of the courthouse like a man fleeing a burning building. His Italian leather shoes slapped against the marble floor. His breath came in ragged gasps. His phone buzzed continuously in his pocket, but he didn't dare look at it. The Porsche was parked in the VIP spot. He fumbled with the keys, dropped them, picked them up, dropped them again. His hands were shaking too badly to function. "Come on," he muttered. "Come on, come on, come on." He finally got the door open and threw himself inside. The engine roared to life. He peeled out of the parking garage tires, screaming against concrete. He dialed Leonard Shaw, his chief financial officer. Leonard had been with him since the beginning. Leonard knew where all the bodies were buried. Leonard would know what to do. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. "Pick up," Marcus growled. "Pick up, pick up, pick up." "Marcus." Leonard's voice was strange, thin, hollow. "Leonard, thank God. Listen to me. The Beaumonts are trying to take over the company. They ambushed me in court. They're claiming they own controlling interest through some shell company nonsense. I need you to—" "Marcus, stop. Transfer the offshore accounts, the Caymans, the Swiss holdings, the crypto wallets. Move everything to the emergency protocols we discussed. We can restructure through the—" "Marcus, stop talking." Marcus slammed on the brakes. A taxi behind him honked furiously. "What do you mean, stop talking? This is an emergency. They're trying to steal my company." "It's not your company anymore." The words hit Marcus like a punch to the stomach. "What did you say?" "They're already here, Marcus. They've been here for 2 hours. Camille Beaumont Hayes walked into my office at 8 this morning with a team of forensic accountants. They have everything. The Cayman accounts, the Swiss transfers, the shell companies you used to hide the gambling debts." Leonard's voice cracked. "They have everything." Marcus couldn't breathe. "That's impossible. Those accounts are encrypted. The passwords are— Your password is your mother's birthday, followed by your high school jersey number. It took them 11 minutes to crack." Marcus's vision blurred. He had used that password for 15 years. He thought it was unbreakable. He thought he was untouchable. "Leonard, listen to me. We can fix this. We can—" "There's nothing to fix." Leonard's voice hardened. "I've already made my deal. Full immunity in exchange for cooperation. I'm not going to prison for you, Marcus. I have a wife. I have kids. You're betraying me after everything I did for you." "Everything you did for me," Leonard laughed bitterly. "You made me cook the books for 8 years. You threatened to fire me every time I questioned your spending. You used company funds to buy your mistress a condo in Miami and made me sign off on it as client development expenses. That was business. That was fraud. And I have emails proving you ordered every single transaction." Leonard paused. "The Beaumonts offered me a choice. Testify against you and keep my freedom, or stay loyal and spend 20 years in federal prison. I chose my family." The line went dead. Marcus stared at his phone. The screen showed 17 missed calls, 23 unread emails, 41 text messages, all of them from people who had sworn loyalty to him, all of them suddenly silent. He dialed his assistant, Patricia. "Mr. Whitfield's office." She answered formally, coldly. "Patricia, it's me. I need you to—" "I'm sorry, Mr. Whitfield. I've been instructed not to take your calls." "Instructed by who? I'm your boss." "No, sir, you're not. The board voted 45 minutes ago. Ms. Elena Beaumont is now the acting CEO. Your access credentials have been revoked. Security has been notified to escort you off the premises if you attempt to enter the building." Patricia, you've worked for me for 6 years. And in those 6 years you've called me sweetheart instead of my name, taken credit for my work in every meeting, and made me cancel my daughter's ballet recital 3 times for meetings that could have been emails. Patricia's voice was ice. Goodbye, Mr. Whitfield. Click. Marcus threw his phone at the passenger seat. It bounced off the leather and landed on the floor. He needed to think. He needed to strategize. He needed Jasmine. Of course. Jasmine, his girlfriend, his escape plan. She was smart. She was connected. She came from money, not Beaumont money, but enough. Her father was a real estate developer. They could run. Mexico, the Maldives, somewhere without extradition treaties. He changed direction, cutting across 3 lanes of traffic. Horns blared. Someone screamed profanity out their window. Marcus didn't care. He was already calculating. He had cash hidden in the penthouse, maybe 50,000, enough to disappear for a few months while he figured out his next move. The Ritz-Carlton lobby was quiet at this hour. Marcus strode past the concierge without making eye contact. He took the private elevator to the penthouse floor. He knocked on the door of Suite 4701. Jasmine opened it wearing a silk robe. She was 28 years old, blonde and beautiful in the way expensive things are beautiful. She frowned when she saw him. "You're early. I thought we were meeting at 2. Change of plans." Marcus pushed past her into the suite. "Pack your bags. We're leaving." "Leaving? What are you talking about?" "The Beaumonts, Elena's family. They ambushed me in court. They're taking everything. But I have cash. I have contacts in South America. We can—" "Wait." Jasmine held up a hand. "Elena's family. The waitress you married." "She's not a waitress. She's a Beaumont. As in the Beaumont family. As in oil shipping, banks, everything." Jasmine stared at him. Her expression shifted slowly. The confusion melted away. What replaced it was something Marcus had never seen on her face before. Calculation. "You married a Beaumont," Jasmine said slowly. "And you didn't know." "She lied to me. She pretended to be poor. She pretended to be poor." Jasmine laughed. It wasn't a warm laugh. "And you, the brilliant Marcus Whitfield, the self-made billionaire, couldn't tell the difference between a waitress and an heiress." "That's not the point. The point is, we need to leave. Now. Tonight." Jasmine walked to the window and looked out at the Manhattan skyline. She was quiet for a long moment. "Jasmine, are you listening to me?" "I'm listening." She turned around. Her arms were crossed. "You're telling me that you've lost your company, your money, and your reputation. You're telling me that one of the most powerful families in America is coming after you. And you're telling me you want me to run away with you to some third world country and live like a fugitive. It won't be forever. I'll rebuild. I always rebuild. I just need—" "You need money." Jasmine tilted her head. "Specifically, you need my money. My father's money." "That's not Marcus." She walked toward him slowly. "Why do you think I'm with you?" He blinked. "Because we love each other." Jasmine laughed again. Harder this time. Crueler. "I'm with you because you bought me a Cartier bracelet last week. I'm with you because you promised to make me VP of marketing. I'm with you because you took me to Cannes on a private jet and introduced me to people who matter." She stopped in front of him. "I'm with you because you're a winner, Marcus. Because you have power. Because when you walk into a room, people notice." She looked him up and down. "But right now, you look like a loser. A scared, sweaty, desperate loser who's about to be destroyed by people so far above your weight class you can't even see them." "Jasmine, I'm not going to Mexico with you. I'm not going anywhere with you." She walked to the bed and picked up her phone. "I'm calling Michael, the hedge fund guy. He's been texting me for months. I didn't respond because you were the bigger catch." She shrugged. "But now you're not a catch at all. You're bait." Marcus grabbed her arm. You can't leave me. I left my wife for you. And she turned out to be a billionaire. Jasmine pulled her arm free. Sounds like you're the idiot, not me. She opened the door and pointed to the hallway. Get out. Jasmine, please. Get out, Marcus, before I call security and tell them there's a man harassing me in my room. Marcus stumbled into the hallway. The door slammed shut behind him. The lock clicked with terrible finality. He stood there for a long moment, staring at the closed door. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out with numb fingers. A text message from an unknown number. Mr. Whitfield, this is Victoria Beaumont Hayes. We need to discuss the terms of your surrender. Meet me in the lobby of the Ritz-Carlton in 10 minutes. If you attempt to run, we will find you. The Beaumonts always find what they're looking for. Marcus looked at the elevator, then at the stairwell, then at the elevator again. Where could he go? His company was gone. His money was frozen. His girlfriend had abandoned him. His employees had betrayed him. He had nothing, except his pride. Marcus Whitfield straightened his tie. He fixed his cuffs. He took a deep breath. If they wanted a fight, he would give them a fight. He hadn't built an empire by giving up. He had clawed his way out of Baltimore with nothing but brains and ambition. He had crushed competitors twice his size. He had survived recessions and hostile takeovers and board coups. He could survive this. He could survive anything. Marcus walked to the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby. When the doors opened, Camille Beaumont Hayes was waiting for him. She wasn't alone. Behind her stood 2 police officers. Marcus Whitfield, one of the officers said. Marcus's stomach dropped. Yes. The officer pulled out a pair of handcuffs. You're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit perjury. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. This is insane. Marcus yanked his arm back. I haven't done anything wrong. Camille held up a manila envelope. $8 million in offshore accounts that you failed to report to the IRS. Company funds used to purchase personal real estate under false pretenses. Fabricated evidence submitted to a federal court this morning in your divorce proceedings. She smiled. It was not a friendly smile. Shall I continue? The officer grabbed Marcus's wrist and snapped the handcuff around it. You can't do this, Marcus snarled. I have rights. I have lawyers. Your lawyers have already been contacted, Camille said. Raymond Cross declined to represent you. He cited irreconcilable differences. 3 other firms we reached out to also declined. Apparently no one wants to go to war with the Beaumonts. The second handcuff clicked into place. I'll fight this, Marcus said. I'll fight you in court. I'll go public. I'll tell everyone how your family entrapped me, how Elena lied about who she was, how this is all a setup. Camille stepped close to him, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something expensive and cold. You're welcome to try, she whispered. But consider this, we own 4 media networks. We have relationships with every major newspaper in the country. We've been preparing for this moment for 3 years, ever since Elena called our father in tears and told him what you'd become. She pulled back. You're not fighting a woman you threw a ring at. You're fighting a dynasty, and dynasties don't lose, Mr. Whitfield. They endure. The officers led Marcus through the lobby. Hotel guests stopped and stared. Someone pulled out a phone and started recording. By tonight, the video would be everywhere. By tomorrow, he would be a national punchline. The patrol car was waiting outside. They pushed Marcus into the back seat. The door slammed shut. Through the window, Marcus watched Camille pull out her phone and make a call. It's done, she said. He's in custody. Tell Elena she can go to the office. The building is secure. She hung up and walked away without looking back. Marcus pressed his forehead against the cold glass. His breath fogged the window. His wrists ached where the handcuffs dug into his skin. He thought about Elena, about the woman who had made his coffee every morning, who had rubbed his shoulders when he came home stressed, who had listened to him complain about his employees, his investors, his competitors. She had listened to everything. She had seen everything, and she had been taking notes. Marcus closed his eyes. For the first time in his life, he understood what it felt like to be completely and utterly outplayed. 3 hours later, Marcus sat in a holding cell at the Manhattan Detention Complex. The walls were gray. The bench was hard. The toilet in the corner had no seat. A guard appeared at the bars. "Whitfield, your lawyer's here." Marcus looked up. "I don't have a lawyer." "Somebody does." The guard unlocked the cell. "Conference room 2. Marcus followed the guard down a long corridor. His shoes, they had taken his belt and his tie, but not his shoes, clicked against the linoleum floor. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Everything smelled like disinfectant and despair. The conference room was small and windowless. A metal table sat in the center. 2 chairs faced each other across it. In one of the chairs sat a man Marcus had never seen before. He was small, with a bad comb-over and a suit that looked like it had been purchased at a discount store. He was chewing on a toothpick. "Mr. Whitfield," the man said, standing up. "I'm Gary Finkel. I'll be your attorney." Marcus didn't sit down. "I don't know you." "No, you don't. I'm not exactly in your usual social circle." Gary pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. "But I'm what you can afford. Your assets are frozen, your reputation is destroyed, and every high-end firm in the city has declined to represent you. I, on the other hand, have nothing to lose." Marcus looked at the card. "Gary Finkel, attorney at law. Se habla español." "My office is above a laundromat in Hell's Kitchen," Gary said cheerfully. "But I've got a 60% success rate in fraud cases, which is better than it sounds, and I'm willing to work on contingency." "Contingency, I don't have any money." "You will if we win." Gary gestured to the chair. "Sit down. Let's talk strategy." Marcus sat. He didn't have any other options. "Here's the situation," Gary said, pulling out a yellow legal pad. "The Beaumonts have you on multiple charges: fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion, perjury. The evidence is solid. If this goes to trial, you're looking at 15 to 20 years. I didn't do anything wrong." Gary raised an eyebrow. "You didn't hide $8 million in offshore accounts. That was tax optimization. You didn't use company funds to buy your girlfriend a condo. That was a legitimate business expense. You didn't fabricate evidence to use against your wife in divorce court." Marcus was silent. "That's what I thought." Gary chewed on his toothpick. "Look, we can't win on the facts. But we don't need to win on the facts. We need to win in the court of public opinion." "What do you mean?" Gary leaned forward. "The Beaumonts are bullies. Old money aristocrats who think they can crush anyone who gets in their way. You're a black man who pulled himself up from nothing. You're the American dream, and they're trying to destroy you because their precious daughter decided to play games with your life." Marcus blinked. "You want me to play the victim?" "I want you to be the victim. Look at it from the public's perspective. Elena lied to you for 10 years. She pretended to be poor. She manipulated you into a marriage based on deception. She let you believe you were building something together, and all along she was testing you, watching you, waiting for you to fail." Gary stood up and paced the small room. "People hate billionaires, Marcus. They hate old money. They hate families like the Beaumonts who've had everything handed to them for generations. But they love underdogs. They love stories about regular guys who get crushed by the system and fight back." Marcus felt something stir in his chest. Not hope exactly. Something darker. Something more like revenge. "So we go public," Marcus said slowly. "We tell my side of the story." "Exactly. We do interviews. We file countersuits. We make noise. We turn this into a narrative about a powerful family destroying a self-made man because he dared to marry above his station." "But I did embezzle money." Gary waved his hand dismissively. "Everyone embezzles a little. The question is whether the public cares more about your accounting irregularities or about a billionaire family's elaborate scheme to entrap and humiliate you?" Marcus leaned back in his chair. For the first time since the courtroom, he felt a flicker of control returning. "When do we start?" Gary smiled. It was not a nice smile. "First we get you out on bail. Then we call every news network in the country and offer them an exclusive interview with the man the Beaumonts tried to destroy." He pulled out his phone. "By tomorrow morning, you're not going to be a criminal. You're going to be a martyr." Marcus nodded slowly. He thought about Elena, about her cold smile, about the way she had walked out of that courtroom without looking back. She thought she had won. She thought she had destroyed him. But Marcus Whitfield had survived worse. He had survived Baltimore. He had survived poverty. He had survived every person who had ever underestimated him. He would survive this too. And when he was done, Elena Beaumont would learn what happened when you woke a sleeping lion. The game wasn't over. It was just beginning. The interview aired 3 days later on Good Morning America. Marcus sat across from anchor Robin Roberts, wearing a simple gray sweater instead of his usual designer suits. No watch, no cufflinks. Just a regular man who had been destroyed by forces beyond his control. He had rehearsed every word with Gary Finkel, every pause, every tear. "Marcus," Robin said, leaning forward with practiced sympathy, "tell us what happened." Marcus let out a shaky breath. "I fell in love with a lie, Robin. For 10 years I thought I was married to Sarah Morrow, a waitress from Louisiana who had nothing. I worked 18-hour days to give her everything. The penthouse, the cars, the lifestyle. I thought I was building a future for us." He paused, wiped his eye. "I didn't know she was Elena Beaumont. I didn't know her family owned half of Texas. I didn't know our entire marriage was a test." Robin nodded gravely. "A test. She wanted to see if I could love her without money. She wanted to see if I was worthy." Marcus shook his head. "But here's what nobody's talking about. She lied to me. For 10 years she looked me in the eyes every single day and lied about who she was. If I had done that to her, they'd call it fraud. They'd call it manipulation. But because she's a Beaumont, they call it a love story." Twitter exploded within minutes. Justice for Marcus started trending before the first commercial break. By noon, it was the #1 hashtag in America. By evening, Marcus had become a symbol of everything wrong with old money privilege. The narrative spread like wildfire. Self-made black man from Baltimore builds empire from nothing. Marries woman he believes is his equal. Works himself to exhaustion to provide for her. Discovers she was secretly a billionaire heiress the entire time, testing him like a lab rat. The Beaumonts stayed silent. Their PR team advised against engaging with what they called tabloid nonsense. They believed the truth would speak for itself. They were wrong. Marcus did interview after interview. CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. He told the same story, every time refining it with each telling. The struggling entrepreneur, the devoted husband, the victim of a cruel social experiment by America's elite. "They want you to believe I'm the villain," Marcus told Tucker Carlson. "But ask yourself this, who lies about their identity for 10 years, who watches their spouse struggle and says nothing, who lets someone believe they're equals when they're actually holding all the cards?" He leaned into the camera. "Elena Beaumont played God with my life, and now her family is using their infinite resources to destroy me for daring to be imperfect." The GoFundMe for his legal defense raised $200,000 in 48 hours. Comments poured in from across the country. "Stay strong, Marcus. We see through the Beaumont lies. Rich people think they can play with regular folks' lives. Fight back, king. Elena is a sociopath. Who does that to someone they claim to love?" Marcus read every comment. He saved his favorites. He started believing his own story. In the penthouse of the Beaumont estate in Houston, Richard Beaumont threw a crystal glass against the wall. "This is unacceptable," he growled, watching Marcus's face on the television screen. He's turning our daughter into a villain. Camille was on her phone scrolling through social media. It's worse than that. People are digging into our family history. They're calling us robber barons, old money parasites. Someone started a conspiracy theory that we secretly funded his company just to destroy it. We did fund his company. To help Elena, not to destroy anyone. Camille looked up. But that's not how the internet sees it. Elena stood by the window watching the Houston skyline. She hadn't spoken in 20 minutes. Elena, Richard said, his voice softening. We can crush this. I can buy every network running these interviews. I can... No. Richard stopped. What do you mean, no? Elena turned around. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with something fierce. If you buy the networks, you prove his point. If you silence him with money, you make him a martyr. She walked toward the television where Marcus was still speaking. He wants us to fight with money. He wants us to look like bullies. He's counting on it. Then what do you suggest? Camille asked. Let him keep lying. No. Elena picked up the remote and muted the television. Marcus's face continued moving, but the room went silent. We let him keep talking until he says something he can't take back. Then we show the world who he really is. Richard frowned. How? Elena looked at her father. I lived with him for 10 years, Dad. I know things about Marcus that even his lawyers don't know. I know what he's afraid of. I know what he's hiding. And I know exactly how to make him destroy himself. She turned back to the window. Schedule a deposition. Make it public. Let him come in thinking he's winning. And then, Elena's reflection smiled in the glass. And then I'll remind him why he should have been nicer to the woman who ironed his shirts. 2 weeks later, Marcus walked into the Four Seasons conference room, feeling invincible. The public was on his side. His GoFundMe had crossed $500,000. 3 publishers had reached out about a book deal. A Hollywood producer wanted to option his life rights. He was no longer Marcus Whitfield, the disgraced CEO. He was Marcus Whitfield, the survivor, the fighter, the man who stood up to the Beaumonts and refused to break. Gary Finkel walked beside him carrying a thick folder of prepared statements. Remember, Gary whispered, stay sympathetic, stay calm, don't let them bait you. I know what I'm doing, Marcus said. I've been doing interviews for 2 weeks. This isn't an interview, this is a deposition. They can ask you anything under oath. Let them ask. Marcus straightened his tie. I've got nothing to hide. The conference room was set up for a legal proceeding. A court reporter sat in the corner, fingers poised over her stenotype machine. 2 video cameras recorded from different angles. The footage would be released to the press per an agreement both sides had signed. Marcus wanted the cameras. He wanted the world to see him face his accusers and triumph. Elena was already seated at the opposite end of the long table. She wore a navy blazer over a white blouse. Simple. Professional. Her hair was pulled back in the same severe bun she had worn in the courtroom. Beside her sat Camille and a team of 4 lawyers. Behind them against the wall sat Richard Beaumont. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence alone was a reminder of the forces aligned against Marcus. Mr. Whitfield, Camille began. Thank you for agreeing to this deposition. I'll remind you that you're under oath. Lying constitutes perjury, which carries a sentence of up to 5 years in federal prison. I'm aware, Marcus said smoothly. I have nothing to lie about. Excellent. Camille opened a folder. Let's start with the basics. You've stated publicly that you were unaware of your wife's true identity. Is that correct? Completely unaware. She told me her name was Elena Morrow. She said her parents died when she was young. She said she grew up in foster care in Louisiana. And you believed her? Why wouldn't I? She was a waitress when we met. She lived in a studio apartment. She owned nothing. Marcus spread his hands. There was no reason to doubt her. No reason at all. None. Camille nodded slowly. Mr. Whitfield, did you ever Google your wife? Marcus blinked. What? Google, the search engine. Did you ever type her name into it during your 10-year marriage? I don't remember. You don't remember if you ever searched for information about the woman you married? We were in love. I didn't need to investigate her. Camille smiled. It was not a friendly smile. Let me refresh your memory. She pulled out a document and slid it across the table. This is a record of your Google search history from March 2015, 3 months after your wedding. Marcus looked at the paper. His face went pale. You searched Elena Morrow background check. Camille read aloud. You searched Elena Morrow family Louisiana. You searched how to find someone's real parents. She looked up. You were suspicious from the beginning, weren't you? I was curious. That's different. You were curious enough to hire a private investigator. Marcus's jaw tightened. That's not true. Camille pulled out another document. Invoice from Sterling Investigations, dated April 2015. Paid by you personally. The job description reads, Background research on Elena Morrow, née unknown. Gary Finkel leaned over and whispered urgently in Marcus's ear. The investigation came back empty, Marcus said quickly. The investigator found nothing. As far as I knew, Elena was exactly who she said she was. But you suspected otherwise. I had questions. Anyone would have questions. And yet in your interviews you said you were completely blindsided by the revelation of her true identity. You said you never had any reason to doubt her. Camille tilted her head. Were you lying then, or are you lying now? I wasn't lying. I was under oath, Mr. Whitfield. Choose your words carefully. Marcus took a breath. I had minor suspicions early in the marriage. They proved unfounded. I moved on. You moved on. Camille nodded. Let's talk about what you moved on to. She pulled out a thick stack of papers. These are bank records from your joint checking account. Over the course of your marriage, you transferred approximately $2 million from this account into personal holdings that Elena had no access to. Those were business investments. Business investments that your wife knew nothing about. She wasn't interested in finance. She wasn't interested, or you didn't tell her. Marcus didn't answer. Let's look at this transfer from June 2019. Camille pointed to a highlighted line. $50,000 to an account in the Cayman Islands. The memo line reads, consulting fees. But there's no corresponding invoice from any consulting firm. She looked up. Where did this money go, Mr. Whitfield? I don't recall the specific transaction. You don't recall moving $50,000. I made hundreds of transactions. I can't remember every one. Then let me help you remember. Camille pulled out another document. This is a receipt from the Venetian Resort in Macau, same date as the transfer. $50,000 in gambling chips purchased by Marcus Whitfield. The room went silent. Marcus felt sweat forming on his forehead. That was a business trip. A business trip to a casino. We had clients in Asia. Entertainment is part of the job. Entertainment. Camille pulled out another receipt. $200,000 at the Bellagio in Las Vegas. $150,000 at the Wynn. $80,000 at Caesar's Palace. She stacked the papers in front of him. Over the course of your marriage, you gambled away approximately $1.2 million of money that belonged to your joint household. Gary Finkel put his hand on Marcus's arm. My client declines to answer on the grounds of... I'm not asking him to answer, Camille said. I'm establishing facts. She turned back to Marcus. You had a gambling problem, didn't you? I had it under control. Under control, you took out a loan against your company shares to cover your debts. You used that loan as collateral for another loan. When you couldn't pay, you started dipping into company funds. Camille leaned forward. That's not control, Mr. Whitfield. That's addiction. Marcus's hands were shaking. This isn't relevant to the divorce. It's relevant to your character. You've spent 2 weeks telling America that you were a devoted husband who was victimized by a lying wife. But the truth is, you were stealing from your own company to feed a gambling addiction, while your wife sat at home wondering why you worked so late. She didn't wonder. She didn't care. She didn't care. Elena spoke for the first time. Marcus looked at her. For a moment, he saw something in her eyes that looked almost like pain. "I used to wait up for you every night," Elena said quietly. "I used to make dinner and keep it warm. I used to practice what I would say when you came home, hoping we could finally talk. But you always came home smelling like whiskey and perfume, and you always said you were too tired." "Elena." "I knew about the gambling, Marcus. I knew about the women. I knew about everything." Her voice didn't waver. "I stayed anyway. For 10 years I stayed. Because I thought somewhere inside you was the man I fell in love with. The man who used to bring me flowers on random Tuesdays. The man who cried at our wedding because he said he'd never felt so lucky." She stood up slowly. "But that man died a long time ago. And you killed him." Marcus opened his mouth, but no words came out. Elena walked around the table until she was standing directly in front of him. The cameras captured every angle. "You want to know why I never told you who I was? Because I wanted to see if you could love me without knowing what I could give you. And for the first 2 years you did. You were kind. You were present. You were everything I hoped for." Her eyes glistened, but no tears fell. "Then you got your first big investment. Then the company started growing. Then you started working late, traveling more, looking at me less." She shook her head slowly. "The richer you got, the smaller I became. Until one day I realized you hadn't really looked at me in 3 years. I was just furniture to you, something that came with the penthouse." "That's not true." "It is true, and you know it's true. That's why you're so angry." Elena leaned down, her face inches from his. "You're not angry that I lied about who I was. You're angry that you failed the test. You're angry that you proved me right." She straightened up. "I gave you 10 years to be the man you promised to be. You chose to be this instead." She turned and walked back to her seat. The room was completely silent. Even Gary Finkel had nothing to say. Camille cleared her throat. "I have one more piece of evidence to enter into the record." She pulled out a small USB drive and plugged it into a laptop connected to a large screen. "This is a recording from your personal phone, Mr. Whitfield, recovered from the company cloud server, dated 3 weeks before the divorce filing." Marcus's blood ran cold. "You can't use that. That's private. The phone was company property. The data belongs to Whitfield Financial, which, as we've established, is majority owned by my client." Camille pressed play. Marcus's voice filled the room. "I'm telling you, Jasmine, it's almost too easy. The dumb cow doesn't suspect anything. I'm going to bleed this company dry, file for bankruptcy, and leave her holding the bag. She's so desperate for my approval, she'll sign whatever I put in front of her. I just need to keep up the act for another 6 months. Then I'm out. We're out. And she can go back to whatever swamp she crawled out of." Jasmine's voice. "What if she finds out?" Marcus's voice. "She won't. She's too stupid. You know what she asked me last week, if I still loved her? I almost laughed in her face. I told her, of course I do, baby. And she believed me. She always believes me. That's what makes this so easy." The recording stopped. The silence in the room was absolute. Marcus stared at the screen, his face the color of ash. He could feel the cameras on him. He could feel the world watching. He started. "That was taken out of context." "Out of context." Camille raised an eyebrow. "What context makes dumb cow acceptable?" "I was venting. I was frustrated. I didn't mean..." "You didn't mean to call your wife stupid. You didn't mean to plan financial fraud. You didn't mean to discuss abandoning her with your mistress." Camille shook her head. "The recording is 4 minutes long, Mr. Whitfield. We only played the highlights. The full version includes discussions of offshore accounts, falsified documents, and your plan to blame Elena for the IRS audit you knew was coming. Gary Finkel closed his notebook. He looked at Marcus with barely concealed disgust. I need to speak with my client privately. Of course, Camille smiled. Take all the time you need. The cameras will wait. She stood up and walked toward the door, followed by Elena and the other lawyers. Richard Beaumont was the last to leave. He paused at the door and looked at Marcus. You should have been kinder to my daughter, Richard said quietly. Now you'll spend the rest of your life paying for it. The door closed behind him. Marcus sat alone in the conference room, surrounded by the wreckage of his lies. The cameras were still recording. The court reporter was still transcribing. Everything he had said, every desperate excuse, every failed deflection was now part of the permanent record. Gary Finkel finally spoke. I'm withdrawing as your counsel. Marcus looked at him. You can't do that. You said you'd fight for me. I said I'd fight for you if you were honest with me. You weren't. Gary stood up and gathered his papers. You're not a victim, Marcus. You're a con man who got caught, and I'm not going down with your ship. He walked to the door. Good luck finding another lawyer. You're going to need it. The door closed. Marcus was alone. He sat in the silence for a long time, staring at his reflection in the blank television screen. The man looking back at him was someone he barely recognized. Older, smaller, broken. He had spent weeks building a narrative about the evil Beaumonts and the innocent victim they had destroyed. He had convinced millions of people. He had almost convinced himself. But Elena had been waiting. She had known exactly what he would say, exactly how he would spin it, exactly when to strike. She had let him build his tower as high as he wanted. Then she had kicked out the foundation. Marcus put his head in his hands. For the first time since this nightmare began, he understood the truth. He wasn't going to win this. He was never going to win this. Elena Beaumont hadn't just beaten him. She had erased him. The deposition footage went viral within hours. By midnight, it had been viewed 17 million times. By morning, it was everywhere. Every news network, every talk show, every social media platform on Earth. The clip of Marcus calling Elena a dumb cow played on an endless loop. Commentators dissected every word. Body language experts analyzed his face. Psychologists diagnosed him with narcissistic personality disorder without ever meeting him. The hashtag changed overnight. Justice for Marcus became Justice for Elena. The same internet that had celebrated him now tore him apart. The GoFundMe was shut down. The donors demanded refunds. The book deal evaporated. The Hollywood producer stopped returning calls. Marcus sat in his motel room in Queens, watching his destruction unfold on a television bolted to the wall. The room cost $63 a night. He paid in cash from a dwindling envelope he had hidden in his sock drawer before the asset freeze. His phone rang constantly. Reporters, podcasters, documentary filmmakers. They all wanted the same thing: his reaction to the footage, his explanation, his apology. He didn't answer. What could he say? The recording was real. His voice was unmistakable. Every word he had spoken to Jasmine was now public property. Around 3 a.m, his phone rang again. He almost ignored it. Then he saw the name on the screen. Mom. Marcus stared at the phone for a long moment. Then he answered. Marcus? Dorothy Whitfield's voice was quiet, tired. I've been trying to reach you for 2 days. I know, Mama. I've been busy. Busy. She let out a long breath. I saw the video, Marcus. Everyone saw it. Mama, it's not what it looks like. Don't. Her voice sharpened. Don't lie to me. I raised you better than that. I cleaned houses for 30 years to put food on your table. I worked double shifts so you could have books for school. I scraped together every penny so you could go to Howard and make something of yourself. Marcus closed his eyes. I know. And this is what you made a man who calls his wife a cow, a man who steals and lies and cheats. Dorothy's voice cracked. "That's not the boy I raised. That's not my son. Mama, please. I called to tell you something, Marcus, and I want you to listen." He waited. "I'm ashamed of you." Her words hit him like physical blows. "For the first time in my life, I'm ashamed to call you my son. I defended you to everyone. My neighbors, my church, my friends. I told them they didn't know the real Marcus. I told them there had to be an explanation." She paused. "Then I watched that video, and I realized they knew you better than I did. Mama, I can explain. There's no explanation that makes this okay. You had a wife who loved you, a wife who stayed with you through everything, and you treated her like garbage. You planned to destroy her. You laughed about it." Dorothy took a shaky breath. "I talked to your father before he died. You know what he said? He said he was worried about you. He said success was changing you. He said you were becoming someone he didn't recognize." Her voice broke. "I told him he was wrong. I told him you were still our sweet boy. I was the one who was wrong. Mama, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Don't apologize to me. Apologize to that woman. Apologize to Elena. She deserved better than you, Marcus. And somewhere deep down, you know that." The line went dead. Marcus sat in the darkness holding a silent phone. His mother's words echoed in his skull. "I'm ashamed of you. For the first time in my life." He had spent his whole life trying to make her proud. Every promotion, every milestone, every achievement. He had called her first every single time. He had bought her a house in Baltimore when Whitfield Financial hit its first 100 million. He had flown her first class to New York for his wedding. And now she couldn't even stand to talk to him. Marcus set the phone down on the nightstand. He looked around the motel room. Stained carpet, water-damaged ceiling, a Bible in the drawer that someone had written phone numbers in. This was his life now. This was what he had earned. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. Marcus's new lawyer was a public defender named Angela Morrison. She was overworked, underpaid, and exhausted. She had 47 other cases. She gave Marcus exactly 15 minutes of preparation time. "The prosecution is seeking the maximum sentence," Angela said, flipping through papers. 18 years federal. The judge has discretion, but given the publicity and the nature of the evidence. 18 years. Marcus's voice cracked. "I can't survive 18 years in prison." "You should have thought about that before you committed multiple felonies on tape." Angela didn't look up. "My advice, plead guilty. Show remorse. Hope the judge is feeling generous." "I want to fight this. I want to appeal." "Appeal what? The evidence is overwhelming. You admitted to fraud on a recorded phone call. You lied under oath in a televised deposition. You have no character witnesses willing to testify. Your own mother gave an interview yesterday saying she barely recognizes you." Marcus froze. "My mother gave an interview." Angela finally looked up. "You didn't see it." She pulled out her phone and showed him. Dorothy Whitfield sitting in her living room in Baltimore, tears streaming down her face. "My son made terrible choices. He hurt people. He hurt his wife. He hurt himself. But I want the world to know that's not how I raised him. That's not who he was supposed to be." Dorothy wiped her eyes. "I pray every day for Elena. I pray she can heal from what my son did to her. And I pray Marcus can find his way back to God. Because right now he's lost. Completely lost." Marcus handed the phone back. He had nothing to say. The courtroom was packed. Every seat was filled. Reporters lined the walls. Camera crews waited outside. The sentencing of Marcus Whitfield had become a national event, a morality play about hubris and justice and the destruction of a man who had believed himself untouchable. Marcus walked in wearing an orange jumpsuit. The tailored suits were gone. The designer watches were gone. The arrogance that had defined him for 20 years was gone. He looked like what he was, a prisoner. Elena sat in the front row of the gallery. She wore a simple black dress. No jewelry, no makeup. She looked tired but composed. Beside her sat Richard and Camille. Behind them, a row of Beaumont lawyers and executives. They had come to watch the ending. Judge Patricia Coleman entered the courtroom. The same judge who had overseen the initial divorce hearing. The same judge who had watched Marcus laugh at Elena all those months ago. She did not look amused now. "Mr. Whitfield," Judge Coleman said, "you have been found guilty of wire fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion, and perjury. Before I deliver the sentence, do you have anything to say?" Angela Morrison nudged Marcus. He stood up slowly. "Your Honor," he began. His voice was hoarse. "I've had a lot of time to think about what I did, about who I became." He paused, gathering himself. "When I was young, I had nothing. My family had nothing. I watched my mother work herself to exhaustion just to keep us fed. I swore that I would never be poor again. I swore I would build something. I swore I would matter." He looked down at his hands. "Somewhere along the way, I forgot why I was building. It stopped being about security. It stopped being about family. It became about winning, about power, about proving that I was better than everyone who ever doubted me." He lifted his eyes to Elena. "I met Elena when I had nothing. She didn't care. She loved me anyway. She believed in me when no one else did. And instead of being grateful, I resented her for it. I resented that she saw me at my lowest. I wanted to erase that version of myself. I wanted to become someone new." His voice broke. "So I pushed her away. I built walls. I found other women who only knew the successful Marcus, the powerful Marcus, the Marcus who had made it. I thought that was freedom. I thought I was evolving." He shook his head. "I was just running. Running from the boy who grew up hungry. Running from the fear that no matter how much I achieved, it would never be enough." He turned to face Elena directly. "Elena, I know sorry isn't enough. I know nothing I say can undo what I did. But I need you to know the man you married, the man who cried at our wedding, the man who brought you flowers on random Tuesdays, he was real. He was the best version of me. And I killed him because I was too afraid to believe I deserved to be that happy." Elena's face remained still, but her eyes glistened. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Marcus continued. "I don't deserve it. I'm not asking for mercy. I don't deserve that either. I just wanted you to know one time the truth." He turned back to the judge. "I'm ready for your sentence, Your Honor." Judge Coleman studied him for a long moment. "Mr. Whitfield, I've presided over hundreds of cases in this courtroom. I've seen men lie, cheat, steal, and destroy lives without a shred of remorse. I've also seen men who genuinely recognize the horror of their actions and commit to change." She leaned forward. "I don't know which one you are. Your words sound sincere, but words are cheap, especially from a man who built a career on selling people things they didn't need." Marcus said nothing. "The prosecution has requested 18 years. Given the severity of your crimes, the premeditation involved, and the public nature of your deception, I find that request reasonable." Marcus felt his knees weaken. "However," Judge Coleman continued, "I also believe in the possibility of redemption, not the certainty of it, the possibility. And I've seen something in this courtroom today that I didn't see before." She paused. "I saw a man face the person he hurt and speak honestly about what he did and why. That doesn't excuse anything, but it suggests that somewhere inside you there might be someone worth saving." She picked up her gavel. "Marcus Whitfield, I sentence you to 12 years in federal prison with the possibility of parole after 8 years for good behavior. Additionally, you are ordered to pay full restitution of $42 million to Whitfield Financial Technologies and its stakeholders. This restitution will be garnished from any future earnings until the debt is satisfied." She banged the gavel. "Court is adjourned." The courtroom erupted into noise. Reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing, lawyers conferring. The bailiffs moved toward Marcus to take him away. "Wait," Elena said. The room went quiet. Elena stood up. She walked past the bar, past the lawyers, until she was standing directly in front of Marcus. The bailiffs hesitated, looking at the judge. Judge Coleman nodded slightly. "Elena," Marcus whispered. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "I know you are." Elena's voice was steady. I could see it. For the first time since this started, I could actually see it. She reached into her purse and pulled out something small. She held it up. The wedding ring. The same ring Marcus had thrown at her chest in this very courtroom all those months ago. "I kept it," Elena said. "I don't know why. Maybe I was hoping for exactly this moment." She pressed the ring into his handcuffed palm. "I'm not forgiving you, Marcus. I don't know if I ever can. What you did, it broke something in me that might never heal." She closed his fingers around the ring. "But I'm letting you go. The anger, the hate, the desire to see you destroyed, I'm letting all of it go. Not for you, for me. Because carrying it is too heavy, and I refuse to let you take anything else from me." She stepped back. "Goodbye, Marcus. I hope you find whatever you're looking for. I hope you become whoever you're supposed to be. But whoever that is, it won't include me." She turned and walked away. Richard Beaumont put his arm around his daughter. Camille followed. The army of lawyers gathered their things. They walked out of the courtroom without looking back. Marcus stood frozen, the ring clutched in his palm. The bailiffs took his arms and led him toward the side door. Toward the bus that would take him to federal prison, toward the next 12 years of his life. At the threshold, he turned for one last look. The courtroom was emptying. Reporters were filing out. The judge was gathering her papers. Elena was gone. Marcus looked down at the ring in his hand. The platinum caught the fluorescent light glinting softly. He had bought this ring with the first big check from Whitfield Financial. He remembered the jeweler. He remembered the way his hand shook as he signed for it. He remembered thinking that he was the luckiest man in the world. That man felt like a stranger now. The bailiff tugged his arm. "Time to go, Whitfield." Marcus took one last breath of free air. Then he walked through the door and into the rest of his life. The prison bus was cold. The seats were hard. The windows were barred. Marcus sat alone in the back, watching Manhattan disappear through the smudged glass. The skyscrapers, the bridges, the city where he had built his empire and lost everything. He thought about his mother crying in Baltimore, ashamed of the son she had sacrificed everything for. He thought about Elena walking out of the courtroom without looking back, finally free of the man who had wasted 10 years of her life. He thought about the penthouse he would never see again, the company that bore his name but would never be his, the future he had imagined that would never exist. The bus crossed the bridge into New Jersey. The city shrank in the rearview mirror until it was just a smudge on the horizon. Marcus opened his hand and looked at the wedding ring. Such a small thing. Such a heavy weight. He closed his eyes. For the first time since this nightmare began, Marcus Whitfield didn't think about winning. He didn't think about revenge. He didn't think about the Beaumonts or the media or the millions of people who now hated his name. He just thought about the boy from Baltimore who had wanted so desperately to matter. The boy who had clawed his way out of poverty with nothing but brains and ambition. The boy who had married a woman he loved and then spent a decade forgetting why. That boy was still in there somewhere, buried under years of greed and pride and fear. Maybe 12 years was enough time to find him again. Maybe it wasn't. But for the first time in 20 years, Marcus Whitfield had nothing left to lose. And strangely, terrifyingly, that felt like freedom. The bus drove on. The city disappeared. The future waited unknown and unwritten. And Marcus Whitfield, the man who had once had everything, began the long journey of learning how to be no one at all. 8 years later, Elena stood at the window of her corner office on the 47th floor. The Manhattan skyline stretched before her, glittering in the early morning light. The same city where she had once sat alone in a courtroom, wearing a second-hand dress, while her husband threw a ring at her chest and called her a maid. That woman felt like a stranger now. A knock came at the door. "Come in," Elena said without turning around. Camille entered carrying a tablet and a cup of coffee. "Board meeting in 30 minutes. The Tokyo expansion numbers are in. We exceeded projections by 18%. Good. Also, Forbes called again. They want to confirm the interview for next month's cover story." Elena finally turned around. "What's the angle?" "America's most powerful female CEO. They want to focus on the turnaround of Whitfield Financial after you took over." Camille smirked. "They're also very interested in the personal story, the divorce, the revelation, the triumph." "Tell them I'll do it, but no questions about Marcus. They'll push. Let them push. The answer is still no." Elena took the coffee from her sister's hand. "Anything else?" Camille hesitated. "There's one more thing. I wasn't sure if I should tell you." "Tell me." "He's getting out today." Elena's hand froze halfway to her lips. "What?" "Marcus. He made parole. Good behavior, apparently. He's being released this afternoon." The room was silent for a long moment. Elena set the coffee down carefully. "I see. But do you want me to do anything?" "Increase security, issue a statement." "No." Elena walked back to the window. "He's served his time. He's not my concern anymore." "Elena." "I said no, Camille. I spent 10 years of my life with that man. I spent another 8 years rebuilding everything he tried to destroy. I will not spend one more minute thinking about Marcus Whitfield." She turned back to her sister with steady eyes. "Now, let's go to that board meeting." The Federal Correctional Facility in Allenwood, Pennsylvania was quiet at 6 in the morning. Marcus stood at the release gate holding a plastic bag containing everything he owned. One change of clothes. A Bible he had read cover to cover 7 times. A photograph of his mother that he had kept under his pillow for 8 years. And a wedding ring. The guard handed him a bus ticket and $47 in cash. "Good luck out there, Whitfield," the guard said. "Try not to come back." "I won't." Marcus walked through the gate. The morning air hit his face, real air-free air, and he stopped for a moment just to breathe it. 8 years. 8 years of concrete walls and fluorescent lights. 8 years of therapy sessions and anger management classes and staring at the ceiling at 3 in the morning, wondering how he had destroyed everything good in his life. 8 years of learning how to be human again. A beat-up Honda Civic was waiting in the parking lot. The driver's side door opened and a woman stepped out. Dorothy Whitfield looked older than he remembered. More gray in her hair, more lines on her face. But her eyes were the same, warm and fierce and full of a love that had survived even his worst betrayals. "Mama," Marcus whispered. She walked toward him slowly. For a moment neither of them moved. Then Dorothy pulled her son into her arms and held him like she would never let go. "Welcome home, baby," she said into his shoulder. "Welcome home," Marcus cried. Marcus. He had not cried in 8 years. Not when the sentence was handed down. Not when his company was liquidated. Not when he learned that Elena had turned Whitfield Financial into a $2 billion empire that no longer bore any trace of him. But standing in that parking lot in his mother's arms, he wept like the boy he had been 40 years ago. The boy who had promised her he would make something of himself. The boy who had broken that promise in every way possible. "I'm sorry, Mama," he sobbed. "I'm so sorry." "I know, baby. I know." Dorothy stroked his head. "But you're here now. You're alive, and that means you still have time to make it right." They drove to Baltimore in silence. The city had changed. New buildings, new highways, new people rushing to jobs that hadn't existed when Marcus was a free man. The world had moved on without him. Dorothy's house was the same, though. small and neat with a garden in the front and a porch swing that creaked in the wind. Marcus had bought her this house 15 years ago. It was the one good thing from his old life that hadn't been taken away. "Your room is ready," Dorothy said as they pulled into the driveway. "Same as you left it." Marcus looked at the house, at the porch where he had sat as a teenager dreaming of escape, at the window of the room where he had studied for the SATs by flashlight because they couldn't afford to keep the electricity on past 9. "Thank you, Mama." "Don't thank me, just be better." Dorothy turned off the engine. "That's all I ever wanted, Marcus, for you to be better. I'm trying." "I know you are." She squeezed his hand. "Now come inside. I made your favorite, fried chicken and collard greens, just like when you were little." Marcus smiled. It was a small smile, fragile and uncertain, but it was real. "That sounds perfect." The first month was the hardest. Marcus couldn't find work. His name was poison. Every interview ended the same way: polite interest that turned to cold rejection the moment they Googled him. He applied to 37 jobs. 37 rejections. He started at the bottom. A warehouse in East Baltimore loading boxes for $12 an hour. The work was brutal. His back ached. His hands blistered. Men half his age outworked him without breaking a sweat. But Marcus showed up every day. He lifted every box. He said yes sir and no sir and thank you ma'am. He kept his head down and his mouth shut and did the work. After 3 months, the shift supervisor pulled him aside. "Whitfield, you're different from the other guys." Marcus tensed. "Sir." "You work hard. You don't complain. You don't cause trouble." The supervisor crossed his arms. "I looked you up. I know who you used to be." Marcus waited for the firing, the lecture, the inevitable consequences of his past. "I don't care about who you used to be," the supervisor said. "I care about who you are now, and who you are now is a damn good worker." He handed Marcus a piece of paper. "We've got an opening for a floor manager. Better pay, better hours. You interested?" Marcus stared at the paper. "You're promoting me. I'm giving you a chance. Don't waste it." Marcus took the paper with trembling hands. "I won't. I promise you I won't." The supervisor nodded and walked away. Marcus stood alone in the warehouse holding a job offer worth $42,000 a year, a fraction of what he used to spend on watches, a fortune compared to what he had now. He had been given a chance. He would not waste it. The years passed slowly. Marcus worked. He paid his restitution $50 a month from his meager salary. At that rate, it would take him 800 years to pay off the $42 million he owed. But he paid anyway, every month without fail, because it was the right thing to do. He went to therapy, twice a week, then once a week, then once a month. He learned words like narcissistic injury and attachment disorder and shame spiral. He learned to recognize the patterns that had driven him to destroy everything he loved. He went to church with his mother, not because he believed at first, but because it made her happy. And somewhere along the way, sitting in those pews listening to sermons about redemption and grace, something shifted inside him. He started to believe that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't beyond saving. He didn't date. He didn't socialize. He didn't try to rebuild his empire or reclaim his status. He just existed quietly in the margins of a world that had forgotten him. And slowly, painfully, he began to heal. 3 years after his release, Marcus received a letter. It came to his mother's house, addressed to him by name. The envelope was cream-colored expensive. The return address was a law firm in Manhattan, Hayes Morrison and Sterling. His hands shook as he opened it. "Mr. Whitfield, my client Elena Beaumont has authorized me to inform you that as of this date, the remaining balance of your restitution debt has been paid in full. This payment was made without conditions or expectations. Ms. Beaumont has requested no contact and expects none in return." She has asked me to convey one message. The debt is clear. Live your life. Regards, Camille Beaumont Hayes. Senior partner Marcus read the letter 3 times. Elena had paid his debt. $42 million. Gone. Erased. Not because he deserved it. Not because he had earned it. Simply because she had decided to let him go. He walked outside and sat on the porch swing. The sun was setting over Baltimore, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. He thought about Elena, about the woman he had married, the woman he had betrayed, the woman who had destroyed him, and then years later set him free. He didn't deserve her mercy. He knew that. But he would spend the rest of his life trying to be worthy of it. 10 years after his release, Marcus Whitfield stood at a podium in a community center in West Baltimore. The room was full of teenagers, kids from the same neighborhood he had grown up in, kids who reminded him of himself at that age, hungry, angry, desperate to escape. "My name is Marcus Whitfield," he began, "and I'm here to tell you about the biggest mistake of my life." The kids looked at him with skeptical eyes. Who was this old man in the cheap suit? What could he possibly know about their lives? "I used to be a billionaire," Marcus said. "I had a company, a penthouse, a private jet. I had everything a man could want." He paused. "And I threw it all away, because I was so obsessed with being successful that I forgot how to be good." He told them his story, all of it. The poverty, the ambition, the rise, the corruption, the fall, the prison, the rebuilding. He didn't sugarcoat anything. He didn't make excuses. He just told the truth, ugly, painful, complete. When he finished, the room was silent. Then a hand went up. A teenage boy in the front row. "You really went to prison for real." "For real, 8 years. And now you work at a warehouse." "Floor manager now. But yeah, I started loading boxes." The boy frowned. "That seems like a waste. You could have been a CEO." "I was a CEO, and I was miserable. I hurt people. I lied. I cheated. I destroyed my marriage and my family and everything that actually mattered." Marcus shook his head. "Money isn't success. Power isn't success. Success is being able to look at yourself in the mirror and not feel ashamed." He stepped closer to the kids. "I'm not here to tell you not to be ambitious. Be ambitious. Dream big. Work hard. Build something. But never forget who you are in the process. Never let your hunger turn into greed. Never sacrifice your soul for a bigger house or a fancier car." He looked at each of them in turn. "Because I promise you it's not worth it. The money will disappear. The power will fade. The people who only loved you for what you had will vanish the moment you lose it. And all you'll have left is the person you became to get there." He stepped back to the podium. "I'm 51 years old. I have nothing, no company, no fortune, no status. But I sleep well at night. I look my mother in the eye. I do work that matters even if nobody notices." He smiled a real smile, warm and genuine. "For the first time in my life, I'm actually free. And I want that for all of you. Not the money, not the fame, the freedom to be good." The applause started slowly. One kid, then another, then the whole room. Marcus stood at the podium receiving applause for the first time in over a decade. Not for a business deal. Not for a quarterly report. For simply telling the truth about who he had been and who he was trying to become. It was, he realized, the proudest moment of his life. After the talk, Marcus walked outside. The Baltimore night was warm and clear. Stars glittered overhead. Stars you could never see in Manhattan where the lights drowned out everything. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. "Saw you on the news tonight. The community center put your speech online. I'm so proud of you, baby. So proud." Marcus smiled and typed back, "Thanks, Mama. I'm finally proud too." He slipped the phone into his pocket and started walking home. He still lived with his mother. Still worked at the warehouse. Still paid his bills month by month, dollar by dollar. But he was happy. Not the manic, desperate happiness of his CEO days, the happiness that was always chasing the next deal, the next conquest, the next proof that he mattered. This was quieter, deeper. The happiness of a man who had lost everything and found himself in the wreckage. He thought about Elena sometimes, not with longing or regret, but with gratitude. She had destroyed him. And in destroying him, she had saved him. He would never contact her. He would never ask for forgiveness. He would simply live his life as well as he could and hope that somehow, somewhere she knew that her mercy had not been wasted. The walk home took 40 minutes. Marcus didn't mind. He liked the quiet. He liked the rhythm of his footsteps on the pavement. He liked the feeling of moving through a world that no longer expected anything from him. When he reached his mother's house, the porch light was on. Dorothy was waiting on the swing, wrapped in a blanket. "Long walk?" she said. "Good walk." Marcus sat down beside her. The swing creaked gently. "It's a nice night." "It is." Dorothy looked up at the stars. "You know what your father used to say about nights like this?" "What?" "He used to say that the stars were God's way of reminding us how small we are, and how that's okay, because small things can still be beautiful." Marcus leaned back and looked up at the sky. A million points of light burning across the darkness. "I think I finally understand what he meant," Marcus said. Dorothy took his hand. "I think you do too, baby. I think you finally do." They sat together in silence, mother and son watching the stars turn overhead. And Marcus Whitfield, the man who had once had everything and lost it all, realized that he had finally found what he had been searching for his whole life. Not money, not power, not success, peace. Across the country in a penthouse overlooking Central Park, Elena Beaumont closed her laptop and walked to the window. The city sparkled below her. Her city in many ways. She had rebuilt Whitfield Financial from the ashes of Marcus's corruption. She had turned it into something legitimate, something lasting, something she could be proud of. She had won. But standing at that window, she didn't feel triumphant. She felt tired. The good kind of tired, the exhaustion that comes from doing hard work that matters. Her phone buzzed. A message from Camille. "The community center video is trending. Marcus's speech. Have you seen it?" Elena had seen it. She had watched the whole thing alone in her office, tears streaming down her face. She had watched the man who had once called her a dumb cow stand in front of a room full of struggling kids and tell them not to make his mistakes. She had watched him take responsibility for everything he had done. She had watched him become finally the man she had always hoped he could be. She typed back, "I saw it. I'm glad he's doing well." "Are you really?" Elena thought about it. "Yes," she typed. "I really am." She set the phone down and looked out at the city one last time. Somewhere in Baltimore, Marcus was rebuilding his life from scratch. Somewhere in this city, the company they had built together was thriving under her leadership. Somewhere in the space between them, a decade of pain and betrayal and destruction had finally transformed into something like peace. Elena smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. She had spent years being angry, years seeking justice, years proving that she was more than the woman he had thrown away. But she was done proving things now. She was done fighting. She was finally completely free. Elena turned off the lights and walked out of her office. Tomorrow there would be meetings and decisions and the endless work of running an empire. But tonight, she would go home. She would pour a glass of wine. She would sit on her balcony and watch the lights of the city she had conquered. And she would be grateful, not for the money, not for the power, not for the victory over the man who had tried to destroy her. She would be grateful for the woman she had become, a woman who had been thrown away and rose to become unstoppable, a woman who had been called worthless and proved herself priceless, a woman who had learned that the best revenge isn't destruction, it's becoming someone your enemies could never imagine. Elena Beaumont had started as a secret. She had ended as a legend. And that was the story of how a ring thrown in contempt became the beginning of an empire, and how the woman everyone underestimated became the queen no one could ignore. Because in the end, the truth was simple. Dignity cannot be bought, loyalty cannot be faked, and the quiet ones are always the most dangerous. Elena had proven that, and the world would never forget it.